The Galactic Council's most elite hunting party gathered on the observation deck of the starship Nemesis, orbiting a dead moon that once buzzed with trade routes and commerce. Now it was silent, another victim of the Void Stalker's rampage. 8 beings stood poised in tense silence, each representing the pinnacle of evolutionary violence from their respective worlds. This was not a diplomatic envoy or a diplomatic task force. This was a pack of killers, assembled for one purpose: extermination. Leading them was the massive Corfac warlord, Commander Vex. Towering at over 3 meters tall, his glossy black chitin reflected the cold light of the stars. Plates of his armored exoskeleton clicked with every slight movement, and even the air around him seemed to bend under his sheer presence. His claws were sharp enough to rend armor plating like paper, and his strength, once measured in cargo hauler units, was legend throughout Council space. Beside him coiled 2 slithering shadows, Hiss and Strike, the Naga twins. Their scaled, serpentine bodies undulated with eerie grace, and their twin fangs dripped with neurotoxin, so potent it could fell a space whale in under 10 seconds. When they spoke, their voices harmonized into a singular, unsettling tone, as if their very speech was rehearsed violence. Behind them stood Fong, the Fenris cyberwolf. His eyes glowed with digital precision, his fur interwoven with nanotube armor, and his claws had shredded through countless hulls of pirate vessels. He barely spoke, but his growls were enough to instill obedience even among his own kind. The rest of the hunting party was a menagerie of death, a crystalline assassin from the Aegis Spires, an amphibious juggernaut from Drax Prime, a floating war monk of the Zarin Order. And then there was Tom. He stood quietly at the edge of the formation, adjusting the straps of his standard-issue human combat armor. He was small, barely 1.7 meters tall, his skin pale and unarmored in comparison to the thick scales, claws, or cybernetics that adorned the others. His kinetic rifle looked antiquated beside the exotic weapons of his comrades. Everything about him screamed vulnerable. To the others, he was more mascot than warrior. When Vex introduced the team, he placed his colossal, razor-tipped hand gently on Tom's shoulder and said something that shocked every member of the hunting party. "This is my little brother." Gasps rippled across the deck. For a Corfac to declare kinship with any non-Corfac was unthinkable. To do so with a human? Absurd. The others exchanged puzzled glances, though a few suppressed chuckles. It had to be a joke. Some alien ritual no one understood. But Vex's expression held no humor. He meant it. The mission briefing was brutal and short. The Outer Rim colonies had gone silent. Void Stalkers, eldritch horrors from the rift between dimensions, were responsible. No one knew exactly what they were. They existed partially in subspace, making them almost impossible to harm with conventional weapons. Worlds they visited became graveyards. Colonies vanished overnight. Technology failed in their presence. Survivors spoke of shimmering phantoms and twisted screams in the dark, if there were any survivors at all. The Council had tried automated drones, orbital strikes, even containment fields. Nothing worked. So they sent predators. Their first destination was Kepler 442b, a resource-rich mining colony that had sent a distress signal 48 hours prior. By the time Nemesis arrived in orbit, the signal had gone dark. As the team descended in the drop shuttle, tension crackled in the air. Most of the hunters performed final checks, charging weapons, whispering kill mantras, coating blades in toxin. Only Tom sat still, gazing through the viewport at the gray-blue planet below, hands folded. Vex noticed. "You are not afraid, little brother?" he asked, his voice like distant thunder. Tom turned his head and smiled lightly. "Fear is just information. Right now, it's telling me to pay attention." Vex rumbled approvingly. The others scoffed. Hiss hissed softly to her twin. "We'll see how long this one lasts." They landed in the ruins of a colony that should have housed over 2,000 miners and engineers. What remained was silence. Wind tugged at loose cables. Doors hung ajar. Lights flickered. There were no bodies, just discarded tools, half-eaten meals, and an unnatural chill that made even the veterans uncomfortable. It happened at dawn. As the twin suns broke the horizon, a low-frequency hum echoed through the air. Mist pooled unnaturally around their feet, swirling without wind. Then from the fog they came. 3 void stalkers, tall, almost humanoid in shape, but blurred at the edges like half-formed dreams, materialized. Their forms rippled, shifting between dimensions, translucent yet present. They emitted no sound, but the psychic pressure of their presence was immense. Even the hardened killers faltered. Hiss and Strike struck first. The Naga lunged with twin fangs bared, spraying venom that would have turned bone to jelly. The droplets passed through the stalkers like mist through mist. Useless. Fong roared, claws blazing with energized plasma. He leapt, raking through one of the figures, but where his claws touched, there was no resistance, only space. Even Vex himself, the brute force of 10 worlds, charged and swung his obsidian warblade. It passed cleanly through the stalkers, as if cutting through fog. The hunters began to fall back, regrouping. Panic edged into their movements. Except for Tom. He didn't attack. He watched. His eyes followed the stalkers, not their shape but their motion. He saw how their limbs lagged just slightly behind their forms. How they shimmered not randomly but rhythmically. Every few seconds they flickered more solid. Less ghost, more flesh. Tom whispered, mostly to himself. Every 3.7 seconds. He raised his kinetic rifle, still so primitive compared to the alien weaponry around him. But this one had been customized. Not with advanced alien tech, but with something more deadly, human foresight. Tom had programmed predictive algorithms into his sighting system. Pattern recognition software, nothing fancy, just what any human coder could scrape together on a military base. His scope adjusted, auto-calculating the stalker's coherence window. He fired. A single metallic slug exited the barrel, perfectly timed. It struck the stalker during its moment of solidity, piercing its warped flesh with a brutal crack. The creature shrieked, a sound like glass breaking inside a mind, and staggered, its body collapsing into a solid form as it died. Windows shattered all around them. Holograms blinked off. But the creature lay still. Dead. The hunting party froze. Strike hissed, wide-eyed. Impossible. How did you know? Tom chambered another round. I watched. Everything has a pattern. Even chaos. Another shot. The second stalker fell mid-lunge, its body scattering in static flickers before solidifying on the ground. The third stalker attempted to escape. It began to phase deeper into subspace, flickering rapidly. Tom didn't aim at its current position. He aimed at the space it would occupy when it anchored again. He fired a third time. The final void stalker screamed and vanished mid-transition. For a moment, the mist cleared. Silence returned. The other hunters stared. Not one of them had landed a hit. Not even Vex. And Tom, the smallest, softest, least equipped among them, had killed all 3. Vex strode over slowly. The great warlord looked down at Tom, who was calmly reloading his rifle, breath steady. They now understand why I call you little brother, Vex said, his voice softer than any had ever heard. They see only your size, your skin, your simplicity. Tom glanced up. And what do you see? I see a predator, one who hunts with the most dangerous weapon of all, his mind. Vex stepped closer. On my world, we say, the smallest hunter is the most dangerous, for he must outthink what he cannot overpower. When I first encountered your species, I thought you were prey. Soft. Weak. But then I saw how you fight your wars. Vex's mandibles clicked together, a smile in Corfac culture. I watched humans turn mathematics into missiles, turn weather into weapons. I saw you wage war with illusions, strategies, and traps. You fight like no other species. Not with superiority, but with insight. You see patterns in chaos and carve victory from them. Tom smiled faintly. Observation is underrated. The other hunters kept their distance on the walk back to the shuttle. They didn't mock him now. They didn't speak. Their eyes, once filled with amusement, were now clouded with caution, awe, and something approaching fear. It wasn't the strength that frightened them. It wasn't the gear or the reputation. It was the realization that Tom had seen what none of them had. that he had looked into the storm and understood it, and that perhaps he could do the same to them if he chose. The galaxy was full of apex predators, but even among them, humans had found their place, not by challenging strength with strength, but by rewriting the rules of the hunt. As Tom cleaned his rifle, seated on the lower deck of the Nemesis, he felt the weight of Vex's words settle in. Being called little brother by the galaxy's most terrifying warrior wasn't an insult. It was recognition, not of his fragility, but of the thing that made humans truly dangerous: their minds.